Hey guys, it's Mike here, and over the course of my channel, I've been asked a question many times and requested for me to do this video. That has to do, once again, with Cell, the perfect villain, and perhaps the best villain in the Dragon Ball franchise, as I talked about in the top right corner, and his absorptions. And the question of, what if Cell absorbed Android 18 before 17? I'm going to be going in depth into this subject, not only in terms of the design, but also in terms of what different powers he might have had, how it might have impacted him and his overall abilities, and strength, speed, and durability, that much more, and how it might have played out differently in the story, especially considering the personality types of 17, 18, and so on. So let me get directly into that right now, as I open up the manga created by Akira Toriyama, and we discuss exactly what would have unfolded. Now, as we know, Cell, well, he went and absorbed 17 first out of the two different androids, Jinzo Ningen, killing machines. And, well, what exactly happened here? Now, Cell went and he snuck up from behind Android 17, like he was the health inspector or something, and proceeded to absorb him with his tail. And we saw what happened here. 16 was trying to prevent this, but it was too late. He swallowed him whole, as Ten Shinhan says. Now, if only he had used the tri-beam right now, it would have actually, helped. But then again, I guess Tien was stupid like everyone else in this arc. Either way, the fact of the matter is we saw just how big of a difference there was in Cell and his design. Immediately, he went from this random lizard cricket bug man into becoming a far more muscular one who, not only was far more muscular and jacked than even Android 16, who's based on Arnold Schwarzenegger, so that's a lot of muscle right there. But look at how much the masculinity on display also increased. This is something that a lot of people bring up. We saw that when he absorbed the male Android 17, he became taller, bulkier, more masculine, bigger muscles, the biceps, the triceps, the deltoids, the trapezius, and especially those pecs. But not just that, but he had, a squarer jaw, just looked more, masculine, manly overall, male in terms of everything. Now, another thing we point out in terms of this beyond the design is the fact that 16, he grabs 18 to run away with the two of them, but Cell, we see that he's able to amazingly outspeed him. And I was turning immediately and amazing into one word, amazing, copyright Laughingstock Media. And immediately, what do we see? 17's enhanced Cell, he immediately comments on his speed. In all honesty, I too am impressed by this newly acquired speed. No doubt a result from absorbing number 17. Now, what else does Cell get from 17? Well, obviously he gets a boost in power. Android 16 proves that Super and Z scaling is very different when he punches Cell right in the middle of a sentence, in the face, and it does nothing to him. Of course, this probably would have killed Goku and Android in Super. But anyway, what happens next? He also comments the fact that, Cell is part Goku after all. And so that appears to have increased quite a bit as well in terms of his power. So obviously, as we know, he got stronger. But what other abilities did he get from inheriting the power of 17? Well, one of them is this power right here. When 17 was just fighting Piccolo about 5 minutes before this happens, big popular number in Dragon Ball, we see that Cell was going to have this preempted because Piccolo is right about to kill 17 with this Hellzone Grenade, this awesome ability. But unfortunately, that didn't quite work out for Big Green right there, now did it? The resident basketball player of the Dragon team. Because he had a force field, a barrier, which he could, put up infinitely because of his energy, as far as we know, and prevent attacks that were, at least around the general vicinity of his power at the time. Because after all, we do see later on when Cell shows up that he dives out of the way of the Hellzone grenade. I have a whole, or the light grenade rather. I have a whole video talking about who would actually win between the two of them, 17 or Piccolo, in the top right corner. Mike, look at the screen when you're editing this video and put that in there. That's why I'm pointing for so long. So either way, that's future Mike. So he got that barrier, which he then goes on to use against Son Goku later on. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about after he absorbs 18. So he absorbs the feminine Android 18 and, well, it changes him dramatically again. We see him going from the bulky, jacked, muscular, masculine android, bio-android being Cell, semi-perfect, is now being perfect, his complete Kanzen Cell. And look at this design that Toriyama drew here. Far sleeker. And perhaps you could say it's the input of the femininity of Android 18 here. Goes from big, bulky, jacked Cell to sleeker, smaller, leaner, and perhaps again, more feminine Cell. You know, you had this being who had absorbed the two of them here. We could take a look at him. He's far more monstrous, far less human in a sense. You know, he's more of a reptile, of a lizard, of an amalgamation of different alien beings that made him up. He looks more akin to Frieza and King Cold, and I have videos in the top right corner as well about who had different influences on Cell in terms of what influence did Frieza have on him, what influence did King Cold have on him, and also what influence did the androids have on him, which I'm talking a little bit more about here, playing into that aspect of him going from this strange, very abstractly humanoid being to being far more human with each new form incorporated. After all, the androids 17, 18 are more like cyborgs, and we see Cell become more and more humanoid, more and more taking on that form. You know, he goes from basically an endomorph to an ectomorph right here. And he even gets shorter. You know, Android 16, he's like 7 foot something, right? 6'10", who knows? Right here, he was probably like 8 feet tall when he was semi-perfect Cell. But now he's probably more like, 7-ish, somewhere around the height of Piccolo. We don't really see him stand up too much to each other face to face in this series after this point. But yeah, either way, much sleeker. So what would happen in this case in terms of the design? Well, before getting into that, I do want to talk again about just how much more powerful 18 made him. Whereas we see about the power of Cell, where the biggest thing he comments on is speed. In the case of Android 18, it makes him so much more powerful than 17 did. In the case of this here, he went from being roughly equivalent in power to 16 to being a good amount above him, but that's nothing compared to the power up that he gets when he absorbs 18 as well, in which he's able to go not only vastly more powerful than Vegeta, who shows up, and Trunks at the time, who are already a good amount stronger than semi-perfect Cell, but he's even stronger than Goku and Gohan after their time in the time chamber, mastering Super Saiyan and just putting them to shame. Not only in terms of when he's suppressed and he's fighting against Goku, but then when he goes all out in full power, everyone's just shocked how insanely powerful he is, even after Gohan went Super Saiyan 2. The only one who's not impressed is Gohan, because he got that much bigger of a boost. Not only the multiplier of Super Saiyan 2, but also the increase of his hidden power. This is from absorbing 18 into his body after the absorption of 17, which made semi-perfect Cell. So that's kind of a question. Is it because the fact that 18 had so much hidden power inside of her, which, as we know, according to the manga and even the anime, was purposely suppressed by Dr. Gero so that she'd be easier to control comparative to 17, whose power wasn't as suppressed. It's arguable that, as I did in a video that I can't share because I already used all my cards, maybe 18 had far greater potential inside of her than even 17, and that's the reason why he went out of his way to suppress her to such a degree. I mean, even not trying, the dude has Vegeta on the ropes. Vegeta hits him with a final flash, and he pretends that it really could have killed him and hurt him and so on and so forth. But if he went full power, well, he very arguably could have just smacked it out of the way. But he just allowed Vegeta to hit him because he assumed it wouldn't do anything to him. And even then, he just grows it back out. And he survives Vegeta's technique and, puts him to shame. So you can argue maybe he just got a gigantic power boost. After all, we never see Android 18 using special abilities like, the barrier. In the video games, I know she can, but in the anime and manga, it's never said she could. It's just an exclusive ability to Android 17. Whereas with 18, I guess she just had pure power and potential on her side. It's a good thing she didn't train with poachers for an ambiguous amount of time because, who knows just how much she'd put her own brother to shame. But let's keep going. Let's see another ability that she might have given Cell, which is the Cell Juniors. Now, this is a kind of roundabout fan theory that's been going on for a very long time. And something that I probably will do a video about in the future, but it is kind of a disturbing theory to say the least, which is that a lot of fans for many years have speculated that Android 18, or at the very least both 17 and 18, contributed to allowing Cell to create the Cell Juniors. Now, in terms of that, the reason for this is because of the fact that, well, first off, Android 18 is a woman. She is able to have children in the Buu saga with Krillin. She has all of that aspect of her reproduction still intact, as we know, but it goes further than that because Cell, well, you could argue he got this ability from Frieza and King Cold with asexual reproduction. You can argue he got the ability from Piccolo Daimao or Piccolo Jr. possibly in terms of creating spawn, although we have been given iffy information about whether or not Piccolo Jr., the Piccolo we know in the series, could actually create his own children anymore. But another disturbing theory is that he actually used the reproductive capabilities of both 17 and 18 to make these clones, essentially these Cell Juniors, essentially making inbred versions of Cell straight from Sweet Home Alabama. So whether or not you think that maybe he got this ability from 18 or from 17 and 18, or if it's just something the computer programmed separately, even from Piccolo and King Cold and so on, well, I just wanted to put that in there because it's definitely something that could have happened, and he could have made semi-perfect Cell Juniors, for instance, that would have made it much harder for Vegeta and Trunks and other characters to overcome him, because right when they're about to kill this guy, well, maybe he could have, spit out some Cell Juniors. Vegeta, I mean, he allows him to become perfect, so there's an argument to be made that he would have just let him keep spitting them out, and they would have been weaker than these ones for sure, but they could have helped him to get 17 in this case as well. Plus, considering just how arrogant 17 was in this case, as we saw, like, he didn't even want to run away. He's like, psh, what, with you on our side at 16, we could totally kill this guy, and he's calling out Cell and everything. He's far more arrogant in terms of his power, it seems like, than 18 was. She just seems to be more psychotic in the future, and I have a video on my channel about why the future androids were so different as well. But beyond that, the thing is that maybe he wouldn't have wanted to run away with 16 like 18 does. Maybe he would have resisted the whole time, and maybe as a result, Cell would have become perfect even sooner. Krillin wouldn't have had his chance to drop and fail with the remote. It wouldn't have played out as long. We could have gotten, in this case, of course, Vegeta and Trunks might have even come out of the chamber, and it was already where Cell was perfect, and they just get stomped much faster than they did in the main storyline because 17 would refuse to run away and keep trying to fight. But then again, it's not like 16 really gave 18 that much of a chance or a choice to get away. And of course, the main reason why he was able to is because Tien decided to whip out his technique that he just didn't so happen to use before this point because, that would have actually helped, and decided to try and, stop him from doing that. So many different changes and variables that go into play. Again, we see, maybe in this case, instead of 18 helping 16 to get away during this, maybe 17 would have tried to help Tien to fight Cell, or who knows. I mean, there's a lot of things that are variables, but it's not something that would immediately change. I mean, after all, we also see that Goku teleports in and helps Tien when this is going on after 18, 16 escape. Would Goku teleport in and maybe, I don't know, encounter 17 here who refuses to escape? If that's the case, would 17 immediately try and kill Goku because that was his whole goal? Or would Goku actually help 17 and teleport him away to Kami's palace, just like he did with Tien and Piccolo? In that case, then Semi-Perfect Cell would have to fly to Kami's palace if he even knew where it was. It's implied maybe he never did know where it was, because after he defeats Vegeta and Trunks, he asks them how they got stronger and so on, which he didn't know. So he could fly around the planet blowing things up and waiting, whereas 17, maybe he would fight Goku, but it doesn't really matter because eventually Vegeta and Trunks emerge and then they'd be able to fight him. So again, so many different things change in story and in universe. But I know the biggest thing that people want to know is in terms of his design. I already talked about the masculinity on display of Semi-Perfect Cell compared to the sleeker variation of Perfect Cell that we see right here, and how that would play out in the story and the narrative. But maybe we have actual insight, because you see, Toriyama actually gave us some other variations of Cell that he drew when he was coming up with his design. And let's look at them right now. Some of these are really cool and interesting. You could see right here, there's a lot of different designs. Like the one I have in the thumbnail right now, which maybe I'll change in the future if it doesn't perform, who knows with YouTube, the one with the hair. You can argue this one might actually be what he had in mind if he had absorbed 18 first. I mean, the face does look kind of similar to 18, especially when you go down here. Not just that, but the hair, it looks like Super Saiyan hair. Could have been blonde hair like 18, or this could be basically what he thought that Perfect Cell would look like. Instead of looking like this and being still like more buggish and lizardish and Frieza, King Cold with the big horn type of things here, maybe he thought, let's make him go fully human except for some of these other aspects that he still retains, like these thorax type of weird connectors and things like that. Still has a little bit of that here, but then his face, aside from the ears, is almost entirely human. I mean, with the ears, he retains more of the Frieza type ears, whereas with this one, he has more like elfin ears for whatever reason, which I think this is one of the only designs we could see here that has that. This one looks more like Semi-Perfect Cell, but maybe again it could be perfect. I mean, we do see perfect here, but I have a feeling this is for a lot of different forms. Some of them, this one looks a lot similar to perfect, and so too does this one here. This one looks kind of like the closest to perfect, but he retains more of those stripes on his appendages that we saw with the original imperfect Cell. I love some of these, though. These designs are so cool. This one looks like Green Goblin. And then we also have, like, look at this one. This one looks so cool. It's very more buggish, kind of like the first form of Cell, but even more like the cicada that we see, which technically would be, I guess, second form of cell after the larval egg. I guess it depends on what you want to call them. I love this face right here. This one looks so cool, looks so monstrous. This one looks great too. So many awesome looking designs that Toriyama drew. I mean, I love this one too. This one is so much like a monster, like a almost, I don't know, it looks almost like maybe Yakan or another creature that we see in GT or so many encounters over time in the story. And this one looks great as well. This one's almost like a combination of perfect with imperfect. So maybe this is what semi-perfect could have looked like originally. We have some more human looking faces and forms. This one looks great. I love this one. This one looks awesome too. He even basically has a pop collar. This one might be one of my favorites too. This one looks the most like Frieza and King Cold. You know, he retains some of that in terms of like the ears and the crown, whatever he's wearing right now. A little bit of that again with this form of semi-perfect cell. But still, I love the way it takes on more of the horns and the Frieza type of form. He's got that pop collar, so you know he's a villain. But yeah, like I love so many of these designs, and many of them could be argued to be what he would look like if he absorbed 18. Maybe this one is more along the lines. I think the closest one might be something like this. Much sleeker. And we even have hair on display. Does that confirm that the idea that what he has on his head is a hat is canon? I don't really know. But I do think there's a lot of great looks that Toriyama came up with over time that you guys can see if I get out of the way, I know. And I would love to see some of these on display. Maybe I'll just do a whole video talking about this in the future as well. And you know, my favorite design of a villain is Cell, probably, and Toriyama would have given us some really interesting, unique ones as well, even more unique in some ways than the original version of Cell. So I think that with all the evidence, Toriyama would have given us a Cell that would have been much different than semi-perfect Cell. If he absorbed 18 first, I think that he probably wouldn't have been as big and bulky and masculine as we see right here. He would have been closer to perfect Cell because he does get sleeker. He probably would have been, you could argue, more powerful than semi-perfect Cell. Maybe he wouldn't have been as swift and fast, which is weird because it is a kind of contradiction to the muscles, especially later on when we see Trunks and Vegeta going to fight against this form of Cell, like right here when Trunks bulks up and goes on to battle against him, but can't really do anything to him because he's too big and muscular, which Goku points out when he's in the chamber right here and actually says, oh, I can't hit him, it's too slow. And so, yeah, maybe it would have been that he would have gotten even more of a power boost. And I don't think that he would have necessarily been able to match up to Vegeta and Trunks. He probably still would have been outmatched and still would have lost to them, but maybe it would have been closer considering just how insane of a boost he gets from absorbing 18. I mean, you could argue it's just that his body had reached perfection, it had reconfigured itself, but you know, going into this, I didn't expect this video to be as in-depth as it is, but with that being said, it ended up being far more of an interesting idea as it is. Most people tend to think of, okay, what would he look like? And I definitely think he would have looked a lot different. He would have looked more feminine, sleeker, and maybe more humanoid as we saw in some of those designs. But at the same time, he might have also been far more powerful based upon what we see with Perfect Cell and gotten different types of abilities. Maybe he would have been able to reproduce with his own semi-perfect Cell Juniors. Maybe he would have been a little bit stronger overall and, you know, some of those other abilities. But let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments. And thanks for watching, and stick around because there's a lot more Cell Saga media to come in the future.
Y'all, and you better subscribe.